365 days, Sunday to Saturday. Most of our lives are spent behind these walls, be it our homes, our offices or malls. These infrastructures are our livelihood. They shelter us, provide societies, economies, companies and individuals the opportunity to live to our full potential. But in a matter of a few minutes or seconds, catastrophes can hit the place you call home. Buildings damaged and lives lost. All because of faulty building design and lax construction practices. Spaces like these might look robust and solid, smart and comfortable. But how many of them can claim to be safe for our families? Homes that have structural safety, buildings that are fire safety designed, and spaces that are designed and managed to minimize indoor air pollution.
We live in built environments. Have we ever considered the safety of these environments we live in? What happens in case of fire? What happens in case of an earthquake? We always think of this as somebody else's problem. It's the builder's problem, it's the fire department's problem, it's the civic authority's problem. But guess what? If I'm spending 90% of my time in these environments, or my loved ones or my colleagues are, I better care. I have to ask the question, is this place safe?
It's very necessary that we build that home with the right material. Now, the right material is not just the cement and the steel, which of course it is, it's very necessary. We need to have that quality in place. But we also need to ensure that we use the right paint, the right material for our upholstery, the right lighting material, the right electric supplies, etc.
The rules and regulations for construction and maintenance of buildings in India do exist. Like many developed countries, India too has a national building code. So if there are regulations and systems in place, where does the problem lie?
For safety of our built environment, there is a national building code that exists in India. The challenge is implementation of this is rather poor because it ends up being either a state or a city-based subject. And there the common answer given is the lack of manpower and resources for urban local bodies, the fire departments, in ensuring not just that one-time safety of the building, but also the periodic inspection of that, which challenges the monitoring of the safety of the building.
In some cases what I have seen, पहले आदमी conceive करता है 6 माले की building, under construction, FSI बढ़ गई locality की, वो बोलता है 6 के ऊपर 3 और चढ़ा दो गिरेगा नहीं. That is morally and legally, that's a criminal.
If the skeleton of a building is weak, the structural integrity is compromised. Engineers involved in infrastructural projects have to ensure that the foundation and structural systems are as per scientifically defined, performance-based specifications and adhere to existing norms, or else.
Budget houses doesn't mean you reduce safety and reduce sustainable. It might mean an additional cost to 3 to 5%, but it is worth spending that amount for a long run. If you take life cycle cost of the building, I think that additional cost will justify in a short period.
If our structural engineer and developer are committed and they keep all these safety things, materials are there in this country. Materials are there. But only, see what happens, the consultant blames the material, the developer blames the consultant. This cock and bull story should stop. This blame game should stop. They must be held responsible. If we are making any structure, I can't say कि मेरे structural engineer ने गलती किया. How many people have suffered their life because of my careless approach, or my structural engineer's casual approach, or my foreman's casual approach, or my contractor's casual approach? Somebody has lost life. We should not. Materials are there. Only will to do a perfect job has to arise.
High-rises in India are cropping up far and wide. But how many of these high-rises will be capable of standing up to the next big storm or the next giant earthquake?
As we are running out of urban land, we're going higher and higher. As you go higher and higher, it is extremely important that your buildings have stability, they have strength, they have the ability to withstand not only earthquake shocks but wind loads. And this can only be ensured through the proper use of material and also proper design.
There was an earthquake in Gujarat back in 2001. It was, I believe, 7.7 on the Richter scale. And the casualties was between 15,000 and 20,000 casualties, and about 1.7 lakh people were injured. A similar earthquake, actually stronger earthquake, 8.3 on the scale, came in Chile. This was 2015, I believe. There were only 7 casualties. And what is the difference between what happened in Gujarat and what happened in Chile? What was the trick behind it? It was all looking at what the codes and ensuring that the proper earthquake-proof material was used, proper design was used. Eventually, it all results in a lot less damage of property and human loss.
When we talk about safer buildings for you and me, it is necessary to talk about fire safety of these structures. But this critical aspect is either ignored or the fire norms violated. Non-functional equipment, faulty building design, negligence in maintenance and lack of strict safety laws might have cost the country several years of research.
बिल्डिंग का जो साधन इसके जो काम फायर फाइटिंग मेजर्स है वो काम नहीं कर रहे हैं. अगर वो काम कर रहे थे तो शायद आग को जो है जल्दी काबू पा लिया जाता.
Sprinklers didn't work. Fire hydrants didn't work. People could not reach where the fire was. Of course, only one thing worked. Alarms worked. But then this is how our system is. We get alarmed, but we don't act. Alarms are not enough. When you have safety standards, standards might have been made and a book might be there, but are we actually implementing it? Is there an audit?
Hours after a massive fire that broke out at the National Museum of Natural History, another major fire broke out at Biomax Fuels Limited in Visakhapatnam. On 24th April, 6 persons, including 4 children, died and over 700 houses were gutted in 2 separate incidents of fire in Bihar's Lakhisarai and Darbhanga districts. On 12th April, a power loom unit on the ground floor of the building in Bhivandi, Thane, had caught fire which gutted 2 of the building's floors and left several residents stranded for hours. On 11th April, a fire had broken out at the dumping ground in Mulund in Mumbai. One of the worst tragedies in the country this year took place on the 10th of April when the fire broke out at the Puttingal Devi Temple complex in Kollam. Over 100 people were killed in that tragedy.
Any fire takes place, there's a science behind that. There's science behind a fire investigation. So fire forensics is now the most important topic these days in developing countries, where people have to understand the nature of the fire, what are the accelerators or what are the contributors to fires.
Most of our modern infrastructures are not fire safety designed. The facade of the buildings or the design of these modern structures can add fuel to the fire.
If you see in the past, a building which is 35 to 40 years old back, these buildings have inherent fire retardant materials which actually retard the spread of fire and smoke. In a modern building, on the contrary, we use a lot of plastics, we use a lot of foams, we use a lot of polystyrenes. These actually are major hazardous substances which actually contribute to the spread of fire and also to the spread of smoke. So the flashover time for the building where the people or the occupants cannot stay more is less than 3 minutes. So here we have one extreme conditions where the modern building is 3 minutes, the other legacy building is 30 minutes. So all this is because the contents in the buildings have changed and the use of petrochemical products have actually added fuel to the fire.
Most of these fire disasters might be cataclysmic in scale, but we can limit the damage.
Provide staircases on the external side of the building, which are having natural light. Fire के time पे light अगर switch off भी हो जाती है, you have natural light. We have windows facing the fire staircases so that the smoke can go out. And most important in fire staircases is the step and the riser. Give step of 12 inches by 6 inches, especially for fire escape. because of evacuation.
With buildings impacting the health of its occupants, we have got to do more than just put in a nice facade. We need to ensure that there is safety behind the facade.
Today, technology is moving at a very fast pace. We are also constrained by limited spaces, and so it's very necessary for us to have proper regulation and standards to ensure that the places that we are living in indeed are safe for all of us.
We must place a significant emphasis, high emphasis on compliance as we start, compliance as we build the interiors, and of course continued compliance. And this continued compliance we are not doing for the police or the fire department, we are doing it for ourselves.
As we look towards the future, what we need is performance-based standards that will help create sustainable, smart, human-centric spaces to live, work and play.
Having sustainable cities, livable cities, cities where people feel safe from fire incidents, where buildings don't collapse in the case that there is an incident. And these are requirements that need to be built into the framework of how these cities are being built and the standards that are used to adopt the building of these structures at the cities.
The air we breathe, the water we drink, and the energy we use have tremendous untapped potential to make us healthier and more productive. And they all converge in the buildings we live and work in. Air pollution isn't just an outdoor concern. We spend most of our time indoors, so breathing healthy air where we live, work and play is critical.
The biggest trouble that we have right now is that people tend to externalize the air pollution issue, right? They think that pollution is all external. It's because of the vehicular pollution or the industrial pollution, and that's the end to it. The fact is that indoor air is more polluted than outdoor air because it is outdoor air plus all the indoor air pollutants, which we tend to lose sight of because it's invisible.
The source for poor indoor air quality could be many. It could be just the simple paint that you're using in house, to the furniture, to the carpets, to the kind of materials that are stored in house. At UL, we have done a research and concluded that there could be over 12,000 different types of chemicals that could contribute towards poor indoor air quality.
A US home or a US commercial office, the indoor air is 8 times more polluted than the outdoor air. This is startling, this is unbelievable. But this is how the landscape has changed with the modern technology.
A good-looking building may not necessarily be a healthy, breathable space. You just might become a victim of sick building syndrome.
People who live or work in a certain indoor environment that lends them to demonstrating symptoms like allergies or some sort of respiratory illness, things like blocked nose or headaches, etc. That is sick building syndrome. Why it happens is basically because the environment inside the building is not right due to the unhealthy air. WHO has also revealed in its report is that more than 2 million deaths occur every year due to indoor air pollution. There are a lot of people who are burning fuel inside their homes for cooking, and that is resulting in respiratory illnesses being on the rise. The COPD population in India is amongst the world's highest. You have close to 30 to 40 million people suffering from COPD diseases, and that is a resultant and a big contributor to that is pollution, both indoor and outdoor. So yes, it becomes very, very important for people to realize that the problem is not only external, and while there are being steps taken to manage the external air pollution, important is to take charge of what is in our control, which is indoor air pollution, and therefore make steps to ensure that the house is cleaner, there's lesser dust inside the homes, and have things like air purifiers to ensure that your family and your employees breathe healthier air.
We have provided a ventilator which is connected to the BMS. It opens at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's not a ventilator like this. The ventilator goes like this. The fresh air comes and foul air goes. So last days, yesterday's, foul air goes up. So 8 o'clock, windows close. Then the air conditioning plant starts. Believe me, this has hardly costed us. But when people work, the air quality inside our office is much better.
India's urban spaces are struggling to breathe. Today, we are moving towards smart cities. Are we ready to create these smart cities with the right mindset?
It's a very exciting time that we're living in India. We are talking about smart cities, and we're talking about over 300 million people moving to smart cities over the next 15 years. Obviously, some of the parameters that we're talking about is people safety, but some things that we need, some other things that we need to look into are, for example, having sustainable cities, livable cities, cities where people feel safe from fire incidents, where buildings don't collapse in the case that there is an incident. And these are requirements that need to be built into the framework of how these cities are being built and the standards that are used to adopt the building of these structures at the cities, within these cities.
Smart is a brand name, but the spirit behind smart city is actually a livable city. And when it is livable, it will also be safe, it will be sustainable, and of course, it will be for common man.
So what is needed for these spaces to thrive? A good place to start would be to create a fresh blueprint taking cues from existing cities to ensure that these cities are smart, habitable, and more importantly, safe.
It is not difficult to incorporate safety, keeping design in mind. I think it should be institutionalized or mainstreamed into our design. Unfortunately, people look at structure and design as two separate activities.
A city living is very complicated. You're building something in the middle of nowhere, nobody will get hurt. But if you are in a city, your safety standards and those audit of those safety checks is very important. And if you don't do it and you don't plan now and you're talking about hundreds of smart cities, it's never going to happen. So better plan upfront rather than regretting later. I mean, we are trying to build these smart cities in India, and these are not greenfield projects. These are not new cities. They are existing cities we are trying to retrofit. So we have taken that also into account. So as far as smart city guidelines are concerned, I am fairly confident that we have done fairly good job. What is missing still, I believe, is a very robust framework of safety standards, which Bureau of Indian Standards is supposed to be working in collaboration with MOUD to come up with. And I think that is something very important, because a smart city cannot be unsafe city. If you are not safe, how can you be smart?
While the National Building Code is in place and we are building more and more in compliance as we go forward, we must also recognize that ours is a huge country, and many of the buildings that we are occupying have been in place for a much longer time than when the National Building Code came into force. So what do we do with those? Do we demolish them and construct fresh? No, that's not practical. So what's it that we can do? We can do one thing, and that is recognize what type of occupancy that building has got, what type of risks are present in that building in terms of fire, earthquake, etc. And we can significantly mitigate them, and of course keep the occupants of that building aware.
So as we build infrastructure as a country, as individuals we buy spaces to work and apartments to live. It is very necessary that we construct buildings that are healthy for our own welfare, for the economy to grow. So yes, indeed, it is time we demand safety standards.
These are the environment that we live in, and we spend more than 80% of our time in a built environment. Therefore, it is not someone else's problem. It is our problem to ensure that these buildings are safe. So what do we need? We demand safety standards. Together with demanding safety standards, we must also ensure implementation of these standards so that we can live in a safer environment.
Safety is a must. India as a society and as a country must demand safety standards, because only that would ensure that the whole system is working as it should work. We should have good regulatory mechanisms, and at the same time we should have good awareness and demand from the consumers. So what I would argue for is good regulatory push and good consumer demand. Both when working together, that would be the foundation for a good, strong, safe society.
It is time we examine the complex systems that drive building performances so that we can make buildings smarter, healthier places to grow up in, work efficiently, or bring up a family.
Providing safety. That's the need of the hour.
Next week on UL Presents India Demands Safety Standards, the experts discuss building a safer infrastructure for a safer India. And if you have a story, opinion or suggestion for us, please visit www.safetystandards.com.